to start off with the definition of the word, then we're going to go into the history of the word, and then we're going. Oh, I'm sorry, no, we're going to start off with a parable or a little anecdote, and then we're going to go through the rest of the routine. So, G, you want to start off with that?
Sounds good. The parable is two travelers come across a man who has fallen on the road. One walks past, thinking someone else will help. The other stops, kneels beside him, and offers water and support. The difference wasn't knowledge. They both saw the same situation. The difference was willingness to feel and respond. Compassion turned awareness into action. That's
Okay.
it.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like I've heard a version of that one somewhere before. Yeah, I love that though. That fits really well into the definition of compassion, or the common understanding of what compassion is.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're gonna do the definition next.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Let's get it.
Who's up? Who's on first?
Whoever wants to read it? I can. All right. Compassion is the awareness of another's suffering combined with the desire to alleviate it. Once again, compassion is the awareness of another's suffering combined with the desire to alleviate it. And this is probably my favorite word so far.
Really?
Love that. Yeah, I think so. That definition is.
Okay.
The etymology.
I got you.
Our
I got you.
resident language expert.
Right. Let me put on my Latin cap. Compassion, the etymology or history of the word is from the Latin compati, with the prefix cum, which is C-O-M, or with, and pati, or to suffer. So literally means to suffer with. I have a little bit of an issue with that, but we'll get into that in just a minute.
Awesome.
All right, so the compassion emotional lens, I got it here, is the feeling, the positive, the negative side. So the positive is care, connection, kindness, and understanding. So that's the positive is care, connection, kindness, understanding. The negative side is emotional fatigue, overextension, if boundaries are absent. Once again, the negative side is emotional fatigue, overextension if boundaries are absent. And why? Compassion asks us to feel and respond. It connects us, but can also stretch us if not balanced. All right. Anybody got thoughts on that?
Yeah.
I'd like you to expound on why you have a issue with the definition.
Okay.
I'm intrigued.
So the history of the word compassion, according to what we just read, is from the Latin, meaning to suffer with. However, my understanding puts that definition a little closer to empathy as opposed to compassion. And so here's the way that I would define those and kind of separate the two. So for me, empathy, and this is just based on my understanding, which is why I said I have an issue with it. May not be the gospel truth, but empathy for me speaks to joining in suffering. It's the capacity to feel someone else's suffering and to take it on almost as your own. Versus where compassion is a little more along the lines of understanding or being able to relate to another person's suffering, and like the definition said, with the drive to be able to help or to want to help. So if I were to give you a visual, if I walk past somebody that's fallen in a ditch, empathy jumps in the ditch with them and now we're both stuck. Versus compassion being noticing that they can't get out and throwing them a rope. That's the way that I kind of visualize it. You know what I'm saying? And again, this is my interpretation. It doesn't necessarily have to be the God. We don't have to take it as gospel. But that's why I said, so the etymology that described it as actually suffering with kind of shifts that a little closer to what my mind understands as empathy versus compassion.
It's interesting. In my understanding, I would think the pit example that you gave, I think that a person jumping in would be more sympathy than empathy. I would say empathy would be more like you talking to the person outside of the pit, but compassion is actually bringing the ladder.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So like empathy would be like, I feel you, I understand you, I know your experience, and you really feeling it. You're really feeling it. But compassion is like, I feel you, I see what you're doing, I'm responding, I'm grabbing the ladder. That's
Right.
kind of like a compassion.
That's how
that's kind of like how I look at it.
I agree. I think you described it well, but I think and this is just based on my understanding. I think you switched sympathy and empathy, because sympathy is, so for me, sympathy and compassion are very closely aligned, because I can see it and I can understand it and I can relate to it and I'm looking to help. Versus empathy, which is literally feeling it within myself. I'm joining you in whatever it is that you have going on. And that's, like I said, that's my understanding of it.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I feel that. I feel that. Yeah, go ahead.
My understanding, sympathy is more like observational, where you recognize someone is suffering. Empathy takes it a little step further, where you put yourself in their place, so to speak.
Yes.
And then the compassion comes when probably you're suffering with them empathetically a little longer than sympathizing. And then you're like, okay, I have something I could offer. So compassion is when something is ignited within you. And I believe that compassion is something that we have to give to ourselves first to be able
100%.
to give to others.
100%.
Because of that negative lens where you can overextend yourself. And I think I've heard people call it compassion fatigue.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I've experienced it, which a lot of us have. That's when you experience burnout.
Yep.
And then either
Or overextension.
somebody else
like that.
around you might recognize it first. And then sometimes your body is going to just shut down. And then you're like, I'm doing too much.
Yeah. We can absolutely wear out our emotions with especially with things like empathy and compassion. Okay, let me switch that. With empathy, I believe that it's very, very easy to experience that fatigue. I think compassion. Well, first let me go back. So you said sympathy. I think you described it really well, because to me, I think sympathy maintains at least some degree of emotional distance. Sympathy is I can hear that somebody lost a loved one, and I can say, oh man, that's really sad. I feel for them. I'm gonna pray for them. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna send them some money or some food or a card. I'm gonna go sit with them and pat them on the back until they while they cry, whatever, like that. To me, that feels like sympathy, or even to a degree compassion. Empathy is, I join in your grieving. And again, this is just my understanding. Empathy feels a little more like I'm joining in your grieving, and we both need somebody to rub our backs. That's kind of the way I look at it. And I think that's when you hear about people who have an empathetic nature, they tend to be people who experience emotional burnout more commonly because they don't have the capacity, or at least the maybe the tools necessary to be able to create that emotional separation, to say, I can be with you while you suffer, and I can even offer help, and I can do what I can to help you. But for me to experience it at the same time, to the same degree as you do, is a different thing. You know what I mean?
That's interesting.
So that's where boundaries are important.
Yeah, I think compassion maintains a certain
Yes.
boundary. Yeah.
Because, would it be because knowing your well, I don't want to say limitations, but knowing that you can only do so much from your own experience, I guess. But I don't know. I've heard it said that compassion has to begin with you first. Not that you matter more than another, but because it has to flow from you first. So if you're compassionate toward yourself, so I think self-compassion is probably where I'm going. Self-compassion, if you learn how to treat yourself well, it's going to be easier to treat others well.
I believe so. It's funny that you say that. We had a conversation very, very similar to that a couple weeks ago, the three of us or four of us. But we'll get into that at some other time. But yeah, I think so. Like with the emotional lens, it mentioned the possibility of overextension as one of the negative impacts of compassion. And I think that speaks to exactly what you're talking about. So like, I can extend myself, and even if we take it back to the pit example, if I'm letting down some rope or some ladder or a ladder or something like that to get to you, if you're in the bottom of this pit, there's only so far that I can reach with this rope. But let's say the rope is a little short for whatever reason. If I extend it all the way until I'm literally reaching at the end of the rope, and I got one end in my hand and it's barely above where you are, you can't quite get it. I'm extended as far as I can go with it. But if I extend any further, then I'm falling in the pit trying to save you, and that's where the overextension comes in, because now now we're in the same. You know what I mean? We've lost that boundary. I've overextended, and now we're both. We both need help.
Right. Right. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's a good example.
Uncle James is stewing. I can see the
Yes,
steam coming off the top of his head. What you working up over there?
I don't know. First thing that came to my mind is not that it's a plug for what we're doing now, but the importance of words and their definitions and their usages. Because as we've been talking about sympathy, empathy, and then compassion, I started checking within myself, do I have the correct definition and understanding and therefore usage of each of those words? So as we've been talking about sympathy, empathy, and then compassion, what came to my mind is I see a stair step, if you will. Now, just as you said, I'm not saying I'm right or wrong, but it's just how I've been thinking about it. And I think that the initial step is sympathy, where you observe the situation and you may have an emotional pull, if you will, for someone being in that particular situation. But the way I was thinking about it, it doesn't necessarily mean that you feel compelled to do something.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
You may not feel, like I said, this is just the way I'm thinking. I'm not
So
trying
far,
to
I'm with you.
establish anything.
Yeah.
Okay. To empathize, to me, is a step further. So, of course, from what I see, the way I see it, sympathy is part of empathy. Okay, because first you observe the situation, and because you see them in that situation, now you may interact with them. So now there's more identification. So instead of sympathizing from a distance, you're aware of it, but they may not know that you sympathize with them. In this case, with empathy, you may insert yourself in the situation with them. You may sit down and just, as you said, pat them on the back, I understand what you're going through, so on and so forth. Compassion, and I was thinking about the definition of the word, to suffer with. To me, that's almost the same word for what true love or God love is. That's why I was thinking about it. So then I was thinking, okay, am I seeing it, or do I think I see it the same way? Because to suffer with, meaning not only do you observe someone else being in that situation, but when you put yourself in it from the standpoint of, I see they're in this situation, and just like they don't want to be in this situation, I wouldn't want to be in this situation either. So then now comes an identification with that individual. How can I help you so that neither one of us are in the situation? Now, it may be a fact that only one person was in that situation, but if I identify with them, the scripture says, esteem other better than yourself. So I'm always looking to help someone. So then if I take on the mindset that because my brother, my sister is suffering, therefore I'm suffering also, then it becomes part of me as well. And to the point that you were talking about fatigue, That's a real thing, and I know it's a real thing, but that's where an emotional strength has to come in to put your care for others so that they can be restored to where they need to be above your own self and whatever you may suffer because you're helping someone else. Because the way I'm looking at it, true compassion, you're not seeing the individual as a separate entity, but we're all one.
And that's where you would bring compassion in, the unity of
Yes.
of us all.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I was thinking. You say you saw the steam coming off my head, so
Yeah,
that's,
yeah, yeah.
you know,
Okay.
those are my thoughts.
Okay.
Interesting.
Because I was thinking more along the line of compassion, empathy. Compassion is a superpower of empathy. I think, and that's kind of how I was looking at empathy. You know, so if you want to push the envelope of empathy, then the next step, like you said, is going to be compassion. I look at compassion as a superpower of empathy, and empathy is a superpower of sympathy. That's kind of like how I would look at it. It's like it's just that it's a maturity, it's a maturation. I look at empathy as a maturation to empathy. You know, what did I say?
This man forgot what he was.
No, because
You said sympathy, then empathy, then compassion.
Exactly, it's a maturation process, right?
Okay.
And so when you look at, if you look at compassion, man, compassion it's way up there. Like it's a powerful, responsive action. It's an actionable thing, and I think that's the reason why I was saying it's a superpower of empathy, because it's a true actionable process, and it brings results. You see what I'm saying? Empathy, and I was just saying with the pit situation, I think that was a perfect example. But I do believe that there's a maturation when it comes to the pit example, and I think compassion is that thing that says, man, you got to get out of there. What can we do? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Collectively, yeah. But that's my thought.
So
I
then,
have a question.
oh, go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, by all means.
I have a question for experience.
Oh, that's me.
Oh, that's me.
Well, everybody has an experience. So it's for everybody. It's for everybody. Everybody
Okay.
has this experience. How can one recognize when someone may be taking advantage, knowing someone is a compassionate person? Like, and what would be wise, or how would it be wise to respond to that?
That's a very good question.
Could you ask that again?
Yes, like if someone knows someone is compassionate, is there a way to that someone can tell that is naive to it that they could be taken advantage of?
I'm aware of a situation, and as I'm talking, I'm remembering an old church mother. She would say, if I don't say no name, I don't bear no blame.
I'm gonna use that.
So we're going to talk about a generalized situation where I know one individual, knowing that the second individual has a heart to help and the ability to help, whether financial or whatever the case may be, reaches out to them. But the one that's doing the reaching out, it becomes clear that they are not placing themselves in a position where they are going to utilize the help in order to get better, so that they no longer are going to need the help.
Okay.
So they become a user, if you will. So then it's difficult for the one who knows that there's a problem out there and that they can help, but wisdom says you're not helping the situation overall. You're just becoming an avenue for them to not step up for themselves. And so that's hard on you, because you know, and it's not even the situation that they're in, but the fact that their mindset is such that they're not willing to help themselves get out of the situation.
Okay.
And so you resolve to leaving them in that situation, but you don't want them to stay in that situation, but you know that with their current mindset, they're not willing to help themselves. So you have to be okay with them remaining in a painful situation, but it's because they choose to stay there.
Okay.
So I don't know if I'm answering your question or not.
That does answer a little. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Interesting. Okay, so are we looking to maybe define? Y'all know me. I'm looking to try to lock the definitions down. Are we looking to maybe define, let's say, compassion as an action in the physical realm, so to speak, and then maybe empathy as an emotional action? Or
I would
am
say yes.
Misreading the way that you guys.
I would say yes. I know I'm cutting off now, and
No,
forgive
you're
me for
good.
that.
No worries.
I'm reminded of a couple of situations that are spoken of in the scripture. One, if you recall, where Paul was going around, because he would go on different missionary journeys, and there was one instance, and it's in the book of Acts, where he was collecting for, I think it says, the poor saints in Jerusalem. Okay, and so this is where he was taking what we today will call pledges. Where he says, if your heart is in the right place and you say you're going to give, but you don't have it now to give, that your heart is as good as the actual giving. So in that instance, there was no money or whatever goods that they were going to, because they didn't have it or it wasn't the time. But then he said later on, now is the time for your intent to match up with your actual accomplishing the deed. So then it went from feeling sorry, if you will, sympathizing, maybe it turned to empathy, but of course they were in different cities, so they didn't really come into contact with them. But at some point now, as we would say, put your money where your mouth is, right? And so then now it had to become real, it had to become tangible, so that he can take it, whether it was money, whether it was clothing, whatever the case may be, and take it back to them. So their initial, once they heard the word that others were in need, our heart went out for them, if you will. But maybe right now, we can't help out. But yet we intend to. So then behind the scenes, we're going to do what we can. We're going to scrimp and save or do whatever else we have to, so that when the time comes, now we're going to do it. Okay, so then, yes, at some point, there has to be the physical aspect of helping a person out of this situation. Another instance came, and it was more general, where I think John, and this is in 1 John chapter 2, 3, 4, because, John talked about love. And one of my old pastors, she said, love has hands and love has feet. Because in the scripture it said, and I'm going to use my own words, it says, how dare you, seeing someone in need, you have the ability, and all you do is essentially say, brother, sister, I'm going to pray for you. And I pray that the Lord blesses you, but you have it to give, but for whatever reason you choose not to do so. And so that's why she would say love has hands and love has feet, meaning in addition to me recognizing your situation and empathizing with you, I use the word empathy, I see, now it has to go to what I will call full compassion, as we would say, put your money where your mouth is, and actually do what's necessary to get that person out of the situation. Because to me, when I hear the word compassion, it's about what can we do to make the whole situation right for as much as we can, so that it's no longer a need to have compassion for that particular thing, because our actions resulted in helping that person get out of the situation to begin with. Because, as you all are thinking, I see, because to me, it's all about whatever we can do to remove any shortcoming, any failure, if you will. Because if we can do it, if it's within our power to do it, then it's just like cleaning up a house. There's dirt over there, there's mud over there, whatever's trash over there. And as you keep cleaning it up, the whole house gets better and better. So to me, the end result of compassion, if it goes on a consistent basis, is you can create a situation where there's no need to have compassion, because efforts have taken place to remove anything that was any shortcomings that created the problem to begin with. And I know you may say that's like pie in the sky, but I see that as the ultimate love to remove harm, so that harm is no more an issue.
I don't see it as pie in the sky. I think that's a really good way of looking at it. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what the definition was. The definition, according to what we had before, was compassion is the awareness of suffering, along with the drive to help or something like that. Yeah, so I think that describes it exactly right. Okay, so as it relates to empathy, then. And this goes back to my understanding of empathy. Mm-hmm. Empathy is, are we in agreement? I guess we could say that empathy is a little more along the lines of emotional action, or less than tangible action. Does that make sense?
Well, I would agree with Tamara if I believe. I think we would say that's more so sympathy. But I'm not trying to put words in your mouth either, though.
I think sympathy to me is more observational.
Okay.
Empathy, yes, more emotional, spiritual.
Okay.
And compassion is like Ethan said, a maturation of those.
Mm-hmm. So, and help me to understand if I'm misunderstanding yours and Ethan's kind of, because I think y'all's kind of tie in really closely together. So the way I'm understanding it is you got sympathy as the kind of awareness, and then like kind of more of a distant feeling, I guess you can say, of, I recognize that you're dealing with this thing and I kind of feel for you, that type of thing. And then empathy comes along and brings those, like, closes the gap, so to speak.
It connects us because we're human.
Okay. That makes sense. I got you. So it establishes a closer connection, obviously based on our humanity. Exactly. And then, are we saying that so that we go from a step that's far apart, or relatively far apart, or maybe far apart, and then one that brings us together to the point where we are kind of experiencing, I'm experiencing what you're experiencing, just because that's what empathy is, and then moving towards the actual act of me stepping in to make a move to help is compassion. Is that what we're saying?
I think so.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good.
I think that there's. Go ahead. You want to say something?
No, I think that's why I was kind of just listening to you all, because I think that I was thinking of compassion more along the lines of sympathy before we started having this conversation and seeing the definition. I kind of looked at compassion as just that awareness or expressing of sorrow. I still am aware of the action that comes after relating to it, but I don't think that's what I had assigned to compassion before. So I'm trying to reframe in my mind what that looks like too. Because just as we said, if sympathy is the awareness or the expression of some kind of sorrow for what somebody's going through, and empathy is relating to it on a human level, by the time you get to that point of taking action, I think there is more to be said about a person who does that, because we know that there's a lot of people who don't take any action about something that may be affecting other people negatively until it starts happening to them. There's a lot of people who, it might see somebody else suffering and say, that's too bad. I do wish something was different for them, but it's not my problem. And then once it starts hurting them, then they start wanting to react or do something, or then be kind of like more sympathetic. So I think that if compassion is taking the action, having the ability to take action before it starts to harm you or hurt you directly is, I think, another reason why it's an important characteristic to have, right? If empathy lets you kind of feel and relate to what somebody else is going through, being able to take action before you yourself are affected is another reason why I think it's an important thing.
Hold on, say that one more time. That last part about
Just
before you getting...
Being able to take action before anything has happened, before that same situation affects you.
Well, I think you're spot on with that, because as you were talking, I was thinking of, for example, these cancer walks, breast cancer or whatever. We know about it, we empathize, sympathize, but I think it's common where someone will say, but I joined because my auntie, my whoever. And then now it becomes personal for them. They have skin in the game, so to speak.
Yeah. Right.
And so then now they're actually doing something where before they were on the sidelines.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
I think I was just thinking about this a little bit further, man. If you guys agree with this or disagree, it doesn't matter. It's just a thought for right now, anyway. I was just thinking about, Jesus, and I was thinking about him going outside the gate, like where the defectors, so to speak, the people that had defects or whatnot, different afflictions. And he made I think with compassion, there's knowledge, understanding, and there's a wisdom that's tied with compassion. I believe that there's an experience that's tied with compassion as well, right? Empathy, of course, but I want to take compassion to this level where we can truly identify the work that needs to be done to alleviate the circumstance. And for someone to say, there's leprosy out there, I have the ability to heal. I'm going to go where no one would desire to go. I'm going to remove fear out of the equation. I'm going to remove circumstances that I was told would happen to me by harm. But because I have the ability to go out there, I will have compassion and go out there and heal. That's kind of how I look at compassion. Is the ability. It's almost like kind of like what you were saying, like the love of God. When you really look at the love of God, and I think Mike, you kind of touched on it a little bit too. Compassion is a high level. And compassion actually has results that come. Does empathy have results? Not like compassion. You know what I'm saying? Because compassion is you can see, and that person that has that compassion doesn't have nothing to prove. You know what I'm saying? He has nothing to prove because he's going toward harm. And that's what I'm saying. And because he has the ability. It's like a firefighter, to me, is a perfect example. The dude can be a drug addict. He can be a drunk. He can do some terrible things. But when he see that house on fire and hear children crying, don't even think about it. I'm going to do that. To me, that's true compassion. That's not empathy. You know what I'm saying? That's harm's way. And I think that that's something to really consider. That's just my thought. What do you guys think?
I think bringing Jesus into the equation is a really good way to talk about it, because as you were speaking, I was thinking about the different points where the writers of those scriptures mentioned when Jesus took compassion on this person or that person. And in every single instance, it was an action.
Yes.
He took compassion on them and he healed him. He took compassion on them and he spoke to him. He took compassion and he fed him and he prayed with him and these things. And so he put his hands to work. Love has hands and feet. He put his hands to work to help to move the needle in these people's lives. And I think that's an excellent way to look at it, framing it with the way that Jesus took compassion.
Man.
Yeah.
Perfect example, man.
So I gotta
Yeah, go ahead.
since we brought Jesus in, I think it's important to note, like when the disciples couldn't cast out a demon, and Jesus was saying, you got to be prepared
Prayer and fasting.
with prayer and fasting. Otherwise, like their heart was in the right place, right? But if you're not prepared, then you're gonna end up in the ditch, basically, like what you were saying.
You overextend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking about that right there.
That's a very good point, man.
That is a good point, because imagine taking compassion or considering yourself taking compassion and making the situation worse. You know? Golly, right.
Please go away.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I was doing fine by myself.
Right, you've helped enough, man. I appreciate it, but going down the road.
So that's a
No, I'm good.
So that's kind of like what I was talking about, that with compassion, I believe that there's a knowledge, a wisdom, and there's an understanding that
Yeah.
that's the reason why compassion is a mature level.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Because you won't be stumbling and bumbling around trying to help somebody. You already know the tool that's needed. You know what I'm
So
saying?
could it be that you could get stuck in empathy without getting all the way to compassion?
That's
You know
it.
what I'm saying?
Yes.
That may be
Very
where
good.
some of that burnout starts to happen, because I feel what you're feeling. We in the same boat together. I'm experiencing it with you, but I don't have the capacity or the tools or
Very
the know-how or
good.
the wisdom to be able to actually jump in and put my hands to work to make a real difference.
Very good.
That's called striving, right?
Striving.
Striving?
Striving.
Is that what it is? Well,
Could be, I guess.
Well, I guess there's another word that I'm probably looking for. Striving to no avail.
Yeah, right. There you go. If we put that together with it, yeah. Striving to no avail.
Okay, I see what you're saying now.
Yeah.
Okay.
You was about to say something?
No.
Yeah, this is actually pretty deep because it got me, it has me, that empathy is, I've always had trouble with that word. Even when we did this we actually did empathy a few episodes back, a while back.
Oh.
Yeah, and but I'm glad we're doing compassion now because it lets you know that these words is a process to these words of thinking, right? You know, and sympathy, to me, I think most people, I'm not trying to make an absolute or anything like that. They think they're empathizing, but they're actually sympathizing in some type of way. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And the reason why the sympathy survives so long is because at humans' core, we are selfish. At the core, we're selfish. Mm-hmm. And sympathy, the reason why sympathy in my mind is a two-way street. It can be dangerous, sympathizing in my mind. And correct me if I'm wrong, y'all. But sympathy can be dangerous sometimes because it can be a stagnation. When you can identify what someone's going through, sometimes you can coddle that person in that situation by agreeing with them, which is nothing wrong with agreeing. But if you agree too much, that person going to be enabled to stay in that situation. That's one thing I think about sympathy. If I'm wrong, that's just my understanding, okay? I could be totally wrong. And that's the reason why we have to, as humans, find a way, like Unc was saying about the step, find a way to, and that's hard, man. And that's what I'm saying is, and that's kind of a thought that I have about how do you bridge the gap from sympathy to empathy? You know what I'm saying? How do you get to that next level, especially when you have the word you use, capacity. Mm-hmm. I love that. The capacity to, or understanding to know that I should not be sympathized right now. I need to utilize empathy at this moment. You know what I'm saying? How does a person bridge that gap or take the next step to the next level?
I think you
Go
like the way you defined it earlier answers that question. It's a maturity thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a combination of having the wisdom and experience to know what different situations look like and what certain responses are going to bring out of each of those situations. And then being able to mature from a place of sympathy to graduate to empathy and then graduate to compassion. Excuse me, you mentioned selfishness, the selfishness of the human creature, so to speak. To me, I think that selfishness can be turned into a useful thing. And here's what that looks like in my mind.
Interesting. Okay.
I'm trying to remember how to actually quote it, but it's something along the lines of love the Lord thy God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love thy neighbor as thyself. Mm-hmm. So I think that the selfishness that we experience just because we're human beings, and this is kind of a part of our nature, understanding how to, and actually it goes back to the conversation we were having a couple weeks ago, understanding how to kind of implement that self-love allows us to be able to, and here's the thing.
It's interesting.
If I view you and you and you and you as equals with myself, because we are all a part of the human body, we're all a part of the human condition, we're all a part of the human family. If I view you as another part of my own self, then I'm selfish, and I can love on me, and I can love on you, and I can take care of me, and I can take care of you. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I think that looking at ourselves as worthy and deserving of care, compassion, things like that, and then being able to see you as equal to myself, which obviously would make you equally worthy and deserving of care and compassion and these other things. I think that's, for me, that's kind of the way that because I'm aware that we have this self-centeredness. It just is what it is. And so for me, and I've spent quite a bit of time thinking about it, like how are we built and designed with that innate characteristic? How do we take that and allow ourselves to be as free and open with loving other people as we can be with loving ourselves? You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of where that's the line that I've drawn for myself.
Mm-hmm.
As you use the term selfish,
mm-hmm.
it was good that you continued to
mm-hmm.
talk and to describe it, because by the time you got to the end,
mm-hmm.
what you said, I understand why you use the term selfish,
mm-hmm.
but the way most people understand the word selfish, that's not selfish.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah.
But I understand why you use that, and so if we understand the context by which you use it, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But what the opposite side is, I would help out, but I might get dirty. I would help out, but I'm wearing my best suit.
Yeah.
I could help out, but if I give you money, I can't add to my 401k.
Mm-hmm.
I would help out, but I'm not the first one to see it. Someone else saw it, so it should be on them first.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So you see, I'm giving different examples
Mm-hmm.
of someone who observes, and they're aware of the situation, going back to the parable that you mentioned at the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Those individuals that didn't do anything, they at least sympathized
Mm-hmm.
and maybe even empathized, but that was it.
Never
Okay?
took compassion.
So if the question is, how do we get to that point? And you just said, two things. On one hand, you said human nature. I'm not so sure it's human nature. I think it's nature that's been a thought that's been learned and accepted by a human. Okay, so in other words, I don't think it's within us to just automatically. There are some things that we learn due to the environment that we're in. Okay.
Well, we grown up in sometimes.
Yes. If we, I was looking at something the other day. I don't know if this is going to make sense or not. Death scrolling. Okay. But
Doom scrolling.
Doom scrolling. Thank you.
Yeah.
But some good came out of this one, maybe. It was weird. They had.
Am I the only one that can't imagine him doom scrolling? Just sitting there scrolling on. I can't picture that for the life of me. But go ahead.
They had infants, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 months old. And then next thing you know, you see people bringing in snakes. I never, snakes. I'm sure they weren't venomous snakes, and I'm sure they wouldn't bite. But most people have a problem when they see a snake. And they laid the snakes down amongst the toddlers. And the toddlers had been playing with their toys. They just kept playing with the toys. And the snake goes through. And what they were saying is children have a capacity to learn fear based on those that are caring for them.
Oh, yes.
So if the adult reacted to the snake, then that's now learned behavior of the child. And so then now they have a fear. Because they learn from someone else that should know, and they're telling them, fear that thing.
Yeah.
In the same way, I'm thinking with respect to what we're talking about now, I don't think it's our nature to do wrong, but it's a learned thing.
Sure.
And so then once it's learned, then it's more difficult to unlearn it. Okay, and so of course what Jesus did when he came was he basically showed us how it's possible to unlearn what we had previously learned. I know that's at a very high level, so to speak, and there was more detail to that. But essentially, so going back to what we're talking about here, if I'm not used to going out of the way to help somebody else out, I'm just not comfortable. That's just not who I am. Okay, that doesn't mean you don't have the capacity to do that very thing that you say you're not comfortable doing.
Right.
You're restricting yourself for whatever reason. Whether it's personal harm, whether it's someone is going to think less of you because you're caring for those folks. Because this can go a lot of different ways. What you actually help them out? Don't you know there's a them and an us, and the two shouldn't meet?
Yeah. Wow.
How dare you show compassion to them? You're only supposed to show compassion over here. So it gets into social, structures now, and so this thing can go a lot of different ways. It can go really deep. But the basic question about how do we get ourselves to remove yourself from the equation, as we used to talk about, but that takes a level of maturity and a level of care for others greater than yourself. To be able to say, I don't care what someone that thinks about what I'm doing the right thing because I know it's the right thing, and it's who I am. I delight in doing the right thing. But that's a maturity thing. That's a growth thing.
So let me ask you this. First, I agree with you. I think that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that that doing wrong by others, whether that is having a lack of compassion or actively causing harm, either way, I think both of those are learned behaviors. I agree with you. But I do have a question. So are you suggesting that a human's selfishness in either context, whether the context the traditional context or the context that I used a moment ago, are you suggesting that those are learned?
It could be learned, because I'm going back to the definition you used as selfish,
Yep.
which, from what I heard, what you're really doing is identifying with others. And you said it was selfish, but you're saying, because essentially what I heard you saying is, they're doing that, and if I see myself in that same situation, I wouldn't want to be in that situation. So therefore, I'm going to help them out because I wouldn't want to be in that situation.
That's mostly what I'm saying.
And I'm saying that's a good thing.
Right.
Because that's where you're identifying with others. It's where you see someone else as you see yourself. Okay? And so if you would care for yourself, then therefore you would care for someone else.
That's it. That's exactly where I was going with it. Yes. So that nature in itself, you're saying, could still be innate.
Yes, but what's happened is we've learned to be individuals.
Right.
Where instead of seeing us or we or a group,
Okay. I got you. I'm with you now.
now I've separated myself.
Yes.
And I know I'm like everybody else, but I'm not everybody else.
Okay.
One of the things going back, I haven't done this in a while, Star Trek, Deep Space Nine. Okay? And, the security officer.
This guy just smiling ear to ear as soon as you said Star Trek.
The security officer, I forget his name.
The changeling?
The changeling. And I remember, but his name isn't so important for what I'm talking about now. I remember one of the episodes where he was able to go back to his home planet, and he had his physical form, but then he went into the pool, if you will, of all of the other changelings, and it was like a liquid pool, if you will, a mass sea. And of course, the message being, yes, you were individual in a physical form, but then when you all join together, you're all one. And to me, you can say that's gospel.
Interesting.
That's gospel and that's scripture, because it's the spirit that draws us all together. So even though we may be individuals in our physical form and we have to go here, there, and everyone can't be in the same place at the same time, but yet when we look at it on a spiritual level, and so when we identify on a spiritual level, then there is no difference. And when you appreciate that, then here comes flows of compassion.
That is that is exactly what I was trying to articulate when I was.
Well, then
talking
why didn't
about
you say it?
Because I'm not as good as you. I mean, this just is what it is. You got a little more. What did Tamara call it? You got a little more experience.
Okay.
Yeah, that articulates
Very
it
well said.
perfectly. We are individuals in the physical sense. Outside of that, in the spiritual sense, we are one, and that's what I mean about seeing you as I see myself, and willing to be able to have compassion on you the same way that I would have compassion on my own self. Yeah, that exactly defines it.
And so to get there, we have to get out of that individualism, seeing ourselves in the physical only. Boy,
Very good.
somebody can preach on this thing.
Yeah. Well, it's one preacher at the table at least.
But no, that's really
gonna
what
pull
it
up on
takes.
you next Sunday.
Because I see, it's about not looking at ourselves in the physical form only.
Yeah,
You know,
I like that you're using only.
yeah,
I like that you're including that word.
you can't deny it because
Exactly.
it
It is what it is.
is
We're
what
here.
it is.
But see, that's you guys are talking at a level. You know what I'm saying? This is high level thinking, right? Like in that regard. Not saying that
We are talking at a level. You in the conversation.
Don't be inviting yourself in.
right.
I think
Go ahead.
I think that we have to talk like this more, and this really creates oneness with these conversations, because there's a lot of because you had a certain idea of thinking concerning the word, and we all had our own way of input, and then it's beautiful that it actually funnels down to this one scope. It's so beautiful, man.
Love that.
And one thing I started thinking about when you were saying that the learned behavior, right, of fear. When I think about compassion, does fear exist in compassion? Is it conditional? Because if we're saying that, because I don't really care for the word fear, right, and the operation. So when I'm talking about doing and working at a level that I believe God's intention for us to operate, I don't think fear exists. And I believe this operation of compassion is at a level.
Perfect love casts out fear.
Come on, man. That's all right. I'm done. that really sealed it. That sealed it. You see what I'm saying? Because when you think about compassion and suffering you're willing to suffer with someone. That's another level. Suffering is a powerful, not only a construct, but a reality.
Because it's a
You know
willful
what I'm
choice. It's a willful,
Yeah.
it's a decision that you're consciously making
Yeah.
to bring yourself into harm or into danger so that you can bring somebody else out.
Man.
Okay, so are we assuming that action comes without fear or in spite of fear, in the face of fear? Because that's two different things.
Yes.
So I think, if I can say it like this,
Well, let me
Did-
jump
did-
in.
did-
I say in spite of.
okay.
No, go ahead. No, I don't want you to.
no,
lose
in
your
spite
thought.
of, yeah, because see, to me is, for one thing, and that's the reason why we haven't done the word fear yet, because it's a huge word, right? I think it's in spite of, right?
I think so too.
And I believe that you are, that's where the tests come, if I could use the word test. That's the moment where I would say bravery, maybe, you know what I'm saying, of, there's another word,
Courage.
heroism, if I can use that, or whatnot, you know, that comes in. It doesn't mean that fear is not there, you know what I'm saying, within, is that you're ignoring it. You know, I'm making a conscious choice to ignore that apparatus.
Can I
So
can I jump in right
yeah,
there?
man, go ahead, bro.
So my understanding of fear, and the only reason why I jump in is because you use one specific word, and I want to challenge. And if
No,
it
go
don't
ahead.
work, then it don't work. But I want to challenge the ignoring fear, because I think that ignoring means essentially to turn your back towards it. When I think that how to address fear is by facing it head on and tackling it, like literally jumping into it. You know what I'm saying? Because if we turn away from it, then it doesn't really go away. Fear has to be conquered, in my mind. It has to be conquered, and the only way to conquer it is by addressing it, dealing with it head on. You know what I mean? What'd you say? Confronting it. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think, and since it's the Let Your Words Count podcast, TM,
There you go.
it's important to select which words we're using when we're talking about how we're going to engage with fear or not engage with fear. So that's my challenge.
No, that's fine. I'm cool with that, because when I was thinking about ignoring, it's pay it no mind.
Okay.
That's kind of what I meant. Pay no. You're there. I see you. You're on my shoulder, man. But I'm like, you're. Because even if that can be, can that be a confront? Yeah, that's still a. The ignore means that I've confronted you. That's kind of what I'm saying. Like in my mind is, I see you there. I confronted it in the aspect that I see you there. You're present. Because compassion is also, presence is there as well. Like, you have to be in the moment. Compassion is a moment thing. You know what I mean? And sometimes can it be a reflex, so to speak? Yeah, maybe. What you want to say is a reflex sometimes, but that reflex can be based off of I'm like, it's Let Your Words Count, and I'm lacking words right now. You know what I'm saying? But I was just thinking about, like, the compassion. That's the reason why I was saying that when you talk about compassion, there's a knowledge and a wisdom and an understanding that goes along with it, right? There's you know how people are witty. I mean, they're quick. I mean, some people are sharp, right? Like, when you say something, they respond like Johnny on the spot. Well, that's kind of how I feel with compassion, where it's almost like I want to say trained, but yeah, maybe it is a trained mentality or thought process in order to create a result that's ideal. I think compassion is about projecting at times an ideal result. I also believe that as well. You know what I'm saying? If that makes sense.
But
And that's, yeah, go ahead.
would you say it's a necessity that it's intentional because of wasted resources? Like what you were talking about before, where somebody, you wisdom will tell you that if I spend my resources here, it's not going to be utilized well because that it's not appreciated.
Okay.
So would you?
Intentional?
Yeah, it needs to be intentional. Would you say?
The act being intentional?
Compassion.
Yes,
I think so.
I would say so. But then if it is, then that speaks, then that places a challenge to the idea of it being reflexive, because things that are reflexive don't really require any intention or purpose behind it. You know what I mean? If it's a reflex, then it happens without me giving it any thought at all. You know what I mean?
There's two kind of reflexes too, though, right? There's like the reflex that you hit the hammer on the knee and the knee just automatically jumps. But then there's the reflex, like in the sense of like somebody training in something. You're training for something to become muscle memory.
Okay.
You're training so that the action that you need to take becomes reflexive. It's not like that at first, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So
That's a good point.
You had, and you guys, both of you guys said the words in the process that I was thinking about concerning compassion. That's beautiful, because remember what I was saying, that I couldn't find the word. Reflective is the right. Reflexive is the right word. And I think you kind of sealed it with that. The two types of reflexiveness, so to speak, in the individual. That's because remember I said something about training. Like you train, and that's key, man.
You're right.
You know what I'm saying? That's powerful, y'all. Powerful. And I think, and goes back to Jesus, man. Jesus was calculated. And I think he was very measured and intentional with the words that he chose to use when he confronted people. And by that, and not only him being blessed with the Spirit of God, that he utilized that Christ mindset to shut mouths, because those mouths were, I would say, they were intentional in another way. You see what I'm saying? They were intentional for self-servitude, but his compassion recognized that and was able to share thoughts, communication that would empower people to be one. Going back to what you said, the other side of that was causing a mindset, and I'm being careful. I think I better shut up.
No,
I think I better shut
the
up.
words he spoke helped a whole lot of people and it angered a lot of people. But that's the thing,
Yeah.
is I don't think he entered his ministry not being aware of how it was going to end. So when you talk about compassion or putting yourself in harm's way,
Yeah.
or making a conscious choice, that's about as conscious as you can get. He started his ministry knowing that
So true.
if I say everything the Father has told me to say, they're going to kill me, and he still made the choice. Going back to the point we were making before, right? That wasn't without fear. When you look at his prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane, he knew what it was. He was acquainted with it. He chose not to let it take control of him. He chose to move forward in spite of what he felt.
Very good.
That he knew that the outcome and the purpose of what he was doing was more important and worth facing that fear down and not letting it win. But I think that was a conscious decision for the whole 3.5 years he ministered, not just those latter moments. I think he knew from the beginning that's what it was going to lead to.
I agree.
Right.
100%.
Most definitely. You know, he's the one that would always talk about, search the scriptures. He read Isaiah. He knew Isaiah, the writer was referring to him personally.
Yep.
But yet at one point he said, for this cause came I into the world.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
Wow. Anybody have any thoughts? My mind is kind of blown a little bit, right, about this word. I thought it's interesting. This show really makes me realize how off I've been concerning defining these words. You know what I'm saying? Because when you think about a word, you hear a word, it kind of just goes over your head because you think you know it. But until you start researching it and really cognitively considering the negatives, the positives that will impact you, you take note and you make changes. And that's what it's all about, right? I want to, for me personally, I want to grow and mature at a place where that mind of Christ to me is very important. And to operate in that thought process is very important to me. And I believe that God, our Creator, is intentional for us to think and operate in that same manner as well. I truly believe that's oneness. I really believe that's oneness, so. But anybody else have any thoughts? I think I'm done.
We've said it all.
Yeah, this was a good one, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. It's a really, really good one. Anybody online got anything? But go ahead, G.
No, I was just going to say, I think one more thing to kind of emphasize is what we were talking about. The difference between, and this is, again, another passage, but applying it practically, like the difference between loving in word only versus loving with action, right? And I think that's the important thing, is that it means so much more, and it's harder to deny if there's action behind it and not just word only. It is one thing, right, to have loving words and encouraging words, but it's just, do consider how much further it goes when there's action behind it. When you look at what it means to do work, you have to look at there's a force behind it, and words can be powerful, but actions are that much more powerful. And the fact that we can approach a person who allows divisions to come up in their mind and that otherness of another person, I think that's put there for a challenge. It's put there so that we can put into practice and have that exercise of, yes, this person is different from me, but if they're in a situation and I'm present and can help, that challenge to kind of step past that divisive mindset or looking at somebody as something different from you. And then, again, finding that common thread of this is another human being like I am. Forget about whatever other way I want to divide our groups up. This is another human like me, so let me step in and act and do the right thing. So I think that's kind of what I took as a summary, is just listening to you guys a lot, learning a lot, and just getting reassurance of a lot of the same things you were talking about too. So I enjoyed that discussion.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Mike, you want to close, brother?
Yeah, I'm sitting here
In deep thought. Yeah.
I'm real heavy in. Okay, so this has been episode 69 of the Let Your Words Count podcast. Thank you for joining us. Happy Monday. We're going to go ahead and sign off for the evening. We're going to probably stick around for another few minutes and just kind of debrief, talk a little bit. But for now, this is all we're going to say to you guys is peace. We'll see you next Monday.
All right, God bless you all.
Take care.